Welcome. Shall we call you Grandma or shall we call you Ellen?
You could call me Ellen. I don't mind being called Grandma Ellen. Well, if you would prefer to say Grandma, that's fine with me. I love being a grandma. When my first grandson was born, it was like my heart busted open and all children became my children. But now I feel like I have strangers, the kids, they come to me like I'm a grandma. So that makes me feel good.
And do you
Yeah.
feel maternal towards Angelina Jordan?
Probably grandmotherly. I relate to her grandmother because her grandmother is even younger than me. And I was a pretty young grandmother when the first one came. I feel there's another realm with Angelina that is not human, that you can't speak about in human terms. So if I was going to speak about it in sort of paradigm terms, then it would be more like souls and angels. I feel like I recognize her, like she's an angel, like she's almost like a healer. I recognize her as a healer and a wise person in the way that she goes into the story and understands the emotional intelligence behind the story. I mean, how else can a young child, age 9, hook into Portrait of a Child the way she did?
Who was taking all the heartaches and all the pain instead?
She has an emotional understanding of the story that is beyond what most people get. And I don't know how much of it is super conscious or just kind of her being that just sort of brings it forth. But, because sometimes we are more than what our mind thinks of us.
Ellen, how long did it take you before you realized this aspect of Angelina? Did you realize it within the first few times of hearing her, or have you realized this over time?
I'm trying to remember which song I heard first. It must have been the 9-year-old, I Put a Spell on You, because I'm remembering black and white film that when I first saw it and I didn't have my sound on, I didn't understand what I was seeing. And I thought, what a strange child. And then I got sound on.
Stop the things you do.
And I started to understand what was going on. And I was blown away by her tone, her breath, that last whole phrase and last word that ends with that last word. That's one breath. Yeah. She's a 9-year-old child, and she's doing the kind of breath that not even adults know how to do necessarily. I've been in choirs, and not everybody knows how to use their breath.
I was watching that again last night for the 486th time, and I realized something, that towards the end, her body language, she goes all relaxed like a floppy rag doll, and it just shows how much she just is flowing relaxed into the performance. And it's something which I've seen it before, but it didn't register. But last night, for the first time, that registered. And for me, that was very striking because I've never seen any other performer do that. Does that ring a bell with either one of you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have started taking singing lessons now.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Angelina inspired me so much that I said to myself, I must try and sing. There's power in singing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned about singing, that you should be totally relaxed from here and up and just let the sound flow out of you and not push it. So the power comes from the rib cage, the lungs. The more relaxed you are when you're singing, I think the better sound you get. So I think that's one of the secrets behind Angelina's powerful voice, is that she is very relaxed in herself.
That was an advantage that she got as a child. If they haven't been made self-conscious, then at the end when she puts her hand on the ledge and is just thinking about how that went, and she's still relaxed, and yet she threw all of herself in, and that was the other thing. That piece shows a great freedom. She was not self-conscious, and she was feeling it, and she was putting her whole body in it the way children do.
So, Ellen, how has Angelina and her talent and her performances, how has that impacted you over the years?
Well, I think I first saw her somewhere just before COVID. I do know that by the time COVID hit, I was on the computer a lot and really focused on exploring her. You know, Bob talked about healing, and I feel that's one of the first things I felt in Angelina's voice. Maybe not the first time I heard her, because I think I was just totally amazed the first few times and trying to understand. And I was listening. I was fortunate to get some reactors who know about singing and could use the proper terms for what she was doing. And some of the stuff that they would say just made me more and more interested. But I had feelings I couldn't put into words. And eventually what they became is an understanding of her, of the healing in her voice, which I was feeling, but then was sort of confirmed when I heard Million Miles. Million Miles is like putting it all out there. It's for everyone to see. That was a healing song. And in Native America, you know, your cry becomes the song. And that is an act of healing, both for yourself and for others. It will always help others too. And it frees the breath, and in the breath is the seat of our personal power. So you are claiming, you are freeing up your breath, and you are claiming your personal power. And that is clear in Million Miles to me, very clear. And I think the elders would have said she had healing in her voice. That's part of the emotional intelligence. That's what touches everybody.
Ellen, you've had quite a lot of insight and you've had quite a lot of healing from the book that she wrote as well, haven't you?
Right. Part of what really hit me was the metaphysical aspect of Angelina Jordan, and I found that very interesting. It came out in some of her interviews where she talked about going to the special place where it's all light and beauty, and the way she talked, I've done lots of reading and exploration in my life, and it was very much like the mystics talk. And also she was very young, so I felt like she had a prolonged connection to where she came from, which is also very much described in very similar terms by people who have near-death experiences. So anyway, at some point, I got in touch with the book. I was very impressed with the Anne Lynn Moe interview, where she reads from her. She's a 6-year-old. She had a cursive diary. And she reads from her diary about that experience. And, you know, that page where she talks about going up a ladder. Like Bob talked about it too. And it's totally beautiful. And I bought the book, and I was finally able to get access to the text. And I was totally amazed, because it was an aspect that no one had been talking about, but totally amazed at what a huge mother theme is in the book. So it's a mother presence. It's a story of someone who has lost their mother, and it's a story of someone who has really good mothering. And those two souls meet. And they have a conversation that is incredible. I mean, it's a totally wise conversation between the two of them. And then throughout the whole story is her mother. Her mother is right there. And Angelina's first response when she hears that the girl has lost her mother is to think, Who reads to her? Who puts her to bed at night? Who's going to guide her through life? All these really specific, off the top of her head, things that she knew as being mother. And it was beautiful, totally beautiful. And then there's the whole thing with Angelina weighing herself many times, so that she gets paid a lot, and that she has had a lot of people on her scales for that day. And her mother pays her, and pays her abundantly. It was not stingy at all. And the girl says, "Oh no, this is way too much. It's not this expensive." Angelina's mother says to the girl, "I want you to go home and rest." What a tender thing, Give her enough money so that today she can go home and rest and not be out in the cold with her bare feet. And Angelina notices the bare feet and a wound on the foot that is still sort of bleeding. And she feels bad. And of course, there's that whole part in the book about her wanting to be inside, and really the empath experience. And she's already relating to this girl in a very beautiful empathic way, but she wants to. Right away, she tells herself, understand her. She tells herself to understand the girl, Then her mother at one point actually hugs the girl. But the part that really, really spoke to me was when she's going to give her shoes away. She says, "My shoes are too small." Of course, she had just gotten those shoes. And what I imagine is she had pestered her mom for a really long time to have these wonderful boots. And she got the boots, and she loved the boots. And now here's this girl that has no shoes. And she says that the boots are too small, so she can give them to the girl. But she says that, and then she looks at her mother. And the way she writes it is she sneaks a peek at her mother, and they talk with their eyes. Her mother and she, Sarah and Angelina, are speaking with their eyes as she goes ahead and offers her boots to this little girl. So Angelina herself is like being the mother to this girl. Angelina is herself already expressing something very motherly due to the great mothering that she has already been experiencing herself, and that she sees her baby sister also receiving. So she's already seen mothering from both receiving and seeing it offered to her baby sister. And it's just so beautiful because, to me, at the beginning of the book, she says it's as if the whole world stretches out in front of her, and it's as if I have created this girl, and she also has chosen me. It's a total picture of the whole birth. Some traditions say we actually choose where we're going to be born before we are born, that there's a total free will involved in it. It kind of makes sense in some ways. It's like, what were you thinking, Ellen? Why did you choose what you chose? But I've had spiritual people along the way even sort of chide me and say, you chose the path of the spiritual warrior before you were born. So in other words, I chose this life in order to learn whatever it is I'm supposed to be learning, in order to develop whatever it is I'm supposed to be developing. I'm at a very deep questioning place again in my life, so it's hard for me to talk about it now. But the mothering, my birth mother was shot and killed by my birth father when I was 2 and my little brother was 1. And I have learned through therapies that that age in particular is a very difficult age to lose your mother, because before that age, we are one with mother. We're totally one with mother when we're in the womb, and then we're born, but we're still an extension of our mother. And then At the age of 2, we've begun to sort of individuate, but we're also still one. And by age of 3, we see ourselves as separate from our mother. That whole process is finished, generally speaking, and we see ourselves as separate from mothers. If you lose your mother before that age, and you just sort of transfer it to the next mother figure that steps in, right? It's not a psychic rending. And then once you're already completely individuated, you know you lost your mother. And you didn't lose yourself, you just lost your mother. Whereas at my age, it was you literally lose part of yourself because you're not completely individuated. So it's as if part of you has died. And so it's a lifelong, the effects of the rending are lifelong. And then I was adopted, and I was adopted by a cousin to my mother and his wife. That turned out to be an abusive situation. He also had his mother murdered by his father, but he was a lot older, and you would have thought that there would have been some compassion, but he was not. As M. Scott Peck talked about, if you're able to name your truth, you're less mentally ill than if you can't name your truth, but you're affected by it. And so that's why the mother theme, I did not properly bond. She didn't know how herself to bond. It was family almost to the trite point. And I remember when I was about 28 years old and really going through it, and I didn't know that what I was experiencing was PTSD. And I called my adopted mother and I asked her, why weren't we hugged? Why didn't you hug us? And she, she explained that her own mother never hugged. There was 12 children, in that family. Felicia was the oldest girl. She really never had a childhood. And because she became like the second mother in this big tribe of people on a farm. So everybody worked. The women worked as hard as the men to get the crops in. So she said that when the babies were born, her mother kissed them once. Kissed them to greet them, and that was it. You didn't get kissed and hugged again.
Ellen, let me ask you specifically, how does the book that Angelina Jordan wrote and the way her mother is portrayed, how has that helped you in your healing?
Because I don't know how to put it exactly. It's because I was been trying to think of it for this meeting, and it's like, it's this. It's that, I have this long life of searching spiritually. My spiritual path and my healing path kind of merged together. And I was going to find God as much as I was going to find healing. And in recent years, I've really questioned that whole path. And I realized that really I was looking for Mother. That my whole God thing was really looking for Mother and looking to belong somewhere. If you don't have a mother, you don't belong anywhere. And that's been the pain in my life, so the book is an example both of loss And what happens? You are impoverished when you lose your mother. Even if you've got money, there's an impoverishment that really happens when you lose your mother and don't successfully replace that bond with another bond, which I never have been able to do. I left home when I was 16. The night, it was traumatic. The night I left, my dad was screaming and ranting on the phone. My brother had been thrown out earlier in the day. I had had a psychic premonition that this was going to happen to me. So I had prepared for it. And I remember she was making dinner and I had to set the table, and this is all happening in the same room. He was yelling loud enough for the neighbors to hear. And I wanted to hug her. Everything in me wanted to hug her. And just like Bob couldn't give the roses, I couldn't give the hug because I was afraid it wasn't okay. I was afraid it wasn't wanted, that it wasn't going to be received. And now I'm a hugger. After I had my kids especially, I became a hugger, you know. I like to, I'm careful about who I hug, and I am really, because of my own healing path, I'm big about asking permission. But I like to hug. I like to comfort people. And Angelina's singing is like getting a hug. The mothering that she knows comes through in that emotional intelligence, in that compassion that infuses every story she tells with her voice, with that beautiful, beautiful, I have never heard such a voice in my life. And I've been a music fan my whole life. If I had been raised by my birth parents, I would have been raised with a lot of singing. But that was part of what happened to me, was I claimed singing. I claimed what they would call power song, my own healing song. And so I understand a little bit about the dynamic of what it is to sing. She has some songs she wrote before Million Miles, but I feel that Million Miles was at the right age for her to really be claiming her power. I mean, she always had her power. It was always evidenced. But that song, the cry, that is full of hope, but it's also full of the pain of the loss, too. And she's turning that loss and reaching with hope, you know, relying on the words that her grandfather spoke to her. And she's claiming her power there. And you really saw it in 2022 in those summer performances where she slowed it way down. That last cry, that last belt, I think she was putting her worries over her grandmother and everything into that, you know. And I really see that as what the Native people would call a power song.
But I know in my heart, I know that I'll never love.
the thing with the mother theme in the story, there's like a metaphysical theme. It's like a validation of my own journey. And then there's this mother theme. And what it is for me, the gift in it for me, okay, let's put it that way, is that it shines like a light. It tells me that what I have to seek in my whole life really does exist. Not everybody is as broken as my family. It exists. It's not some fantasy. And just the visual expression of that, I don't know why it's more real. I don't think I've seen any other mothering up close like that. So I think that it's just like it exists, and knowing that it exists and that at some level it's in the universe for all of us. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That the knowledge that it exists and the feeling that it comes through what an Angelina sings, that compassion especially. It's just a tiny thing, but it's like a seed that's growing in my heart. It just makes me feel like, oh my God, it's real. Somebody on the planet knows what real mothering is. Somebody on the planet can look at her mother and they can speak together with their eyes.
It's wonderful how Angelina Jordan's talent can be universalized and personalized by each individual for what they really need. Because of the type of artist that she is, we can take her art and make it personal for our own individual healing. And this is something which I'm hearing loud and clear from what you're describing. And this is really, really important. The universal aspect of her healing.
Yes, yes.
Someone else with a different problem will be able to extract something different, whether it be from the same song or a different song or a certain type of performance, but they are able to extract what they need. And that is something which is, in a way, I'm really hearing this for the first time now as you speak.
I really feel that having had to work through my own healing, and I'm an empath too, and it was a good thing because it helped me to survive. But there aren't so many wounds that we're all different. It's like we're all wounded in very similar ways. We all need the same things everywhere on the planet, no matter what people you're born from, what culture you're born into. We really are all human, and we all need the same things. And so the wounds really aren't that many. They come in different circumstances very much, very much. But the list of them isn't that long. And so when you say universal, that's absolutely what is there. I think that's why her writer and poet friend that encouraged her to publish, I think that's what he saw in it too. When I was being tutored into writing poetry, one of the things that is always said is the specific speaks to the universal. So you don't say flower, you say daisy, or you say violet, or you say rose, or you say petunia. In other words, you don't speak in general terms that don't give you a picture. You speak in the specific. That's why Bob's image of the roses was so powerful. Is what a specific image. It's the same moment as me not being able to hug my adopted mother before I left that night. And I never went back to live there. That was gone. I never went back. Later on, as a young adult, some attempts at reconnection, they just didn't go very well. And the few times I went back home to their house, I was so dissociated that I hardly remember the visits at all. So we never reconnected. We never had a last talk before she died. She stopped. I realized she didn't want to contact me. She'd be in the area for her cake decorating. She lived in California. I lived up here in the state of Washington. And she never, anyway. I mean, I was rejected and betrayed by her also. And then I had a foster mother for a while, but that was very brief. And then she ultimately died when my children were little of cancer. And so I never successfully had another mother.
I'm sure Angelina is very happy to share her mother with you.
Her mother, I think, is younger than me. But I know what you mean. Just the example of it. I've seen some short video clips of young Sarah with young Angelina, like before she was even on Norway's Got Talent. And she just looks like an ordinary young mother, you know. But there is a way that she's been raising Angelina and Juliet that is not anything I know about, that isn't full of fear, isn't full of punishment, negativity, you know. So
your story really moved me. And I wasn't aware of it before we started recording today, but all my life I have wanted to be safe and comforted. And I think that is part of the reason that I connected with Angelina with that first listen with Bohemian Rhapsody. That I felt something. And I think you've put your finger on what it was that I felt. And it was the motherly love, I think, that sort of just gets transmitted through her singing. Because I know when I was 3 months old, I had eczema and was put into hospital. And at that time, they wouldn't allow my mother to go there and comfort me. So I've always thought that was one of the underlying reasons why I've always wanted that kind of comfort and always been a little bit afraid to be alone.
right.
All of Angelina's energy that she puts out is all about being safe. You're not alone.
Right.
Yes, I think that's... I was very moved when you started talking, because the universal theme of it, it's like we all want that. We all need that motherly love. My mother was also traumatized by her upbringing, and she ran away when she was 18. She actually called the police and said, "Can my parents stop me from moving away?" And they said, "How old are you?" "I'm 18. "No, they can't." So then she just moved away. She was haunted in a whole life from that kind of upbringing. She was an alcoholic.
They call that medication for the pain.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
We all have skeletons in our closet, and it's just a matter of how big they are and how real they are, and how we can exercise them, how we see the skeletons and how we can get rid of them. It's a lifetime of work, and it's not a matter of a completely 100% cure. It's like going through different levels of realization, and then different levels of catching up, and different levels of soothing. But maybe the word cure doesn't really come into it.
I think it's a work. I know that it's generational, and so I've been able to help my daughter because, you have your children before you start getting conscious. And while I did better than what was done to me, it was a bad marriage. It was an abusive marriage, and I had to get out. So, basically my kids are traumatized too. But what's different is I'm able to validate my daughter when she comes and talks to me about something. I'm able to say, well, yes, this is what was going on. And of course, you were born into unhappiness. I wasn't happy. So it's a work. And I feel that, I've been able to help her, and she's held on to sobriety now for a really long time already. And that's good, because part of what the wound when my mother was killed, alcohol was involved. And the same thing with the other wounds in the family that ultimately affected me. There was a lot of alcohol. I had to find that whole side of my family, the whole birth father side of my family, because after all that happened, the courts would not let my maternal grandmother, have me. They said she was too old and mentally unstable. And well, she was in grief and absolute rage too that had happened, and who could fault her for that? But my parents had been married a while and had not had children, and his mother was my grandmother's sister, so he had lived with them for a while, so it was natural for them if they hadn't adopted us, we would have been adopted out to strangers.
Yeah.
And in those days, they shut the records. They sealed the records. You didn't get to know anything.
Let me just ask you, I've been wondering, what do you think Angelina would say if she heard us talk like this about her performances and her artistry?
She said she wanted to sing for the whole world, to make people happy. And I don't know if she understands that there's healing that comes through her voice, that quality of her voice that has that warm tone.
Yeah.
And that compassion. Look at the stories she's drawn to sing. She strips it back, like the Elvis Suspicious Minds.
Oh, little love, survive. I dry the tears from your eyes. Just don't let a good thing die. Well, honey, I've never lied to you.
She stripped that back. She took that false party vibe away from that. She sang it more like the original writer intended. Yeah. And look at the compassion that you hear. I feel the compassion for both the woman and the man, for both, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. For the lack of trust that's going on there. And in that story, there's compassion for all the players. That's that universal mother thing. So I think that compassion that comes through every story she tells, she gets a hold of and makes her own. She tells through that emotional intelligence and that incredible musical intelligence.
Yeah.
If our stories were a song and she got a hold of it, she would be making it her own and putting that wonderful fry and that wonderful vibrato and the rasp and all that stuff in there. I imagine I would love it to be a really strictly jazz song if she did my story in a song. And I think she would treat it with the compassion. And I've come to that place that there's all these people that wounded me. They themselves were wounded people, very wounded people. And the stuff that got handed down, the kinds of abuse that I went through, which also included sexual abuse, that all was generational stuff that kept going down the generations, you know. So I have come to the place in my life where there is compassion for all the players. I'm being encouraged by my therapist and by others to write a book about my life. And it's like, who wants to hear about this, you know? But I do know from some of my poetry that it connects to people. You know, we all need to feel we're not alone. And when we hear other stories that are like ours, we realize we're not alone, that we are not the only person it happened to. And ultimately, that's our brotherhood, our sisterhood. We're all children. We're all wounded children.
Yeah.
I think our brotherhood is a very, very good place to end. For me, when I look at Mary's painting with dozens and dozens of anonymous people, for me, this is a painting about brotherhood. And this is something which Mary understands very deeply. And because Mary understands it deeply, so too does Angelina. And my brother Pontus and I have had a wonderful conversation with you tonight, Ellen.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's been
very
moving.
I hope it makes sense.
It makes great sense, and it's very valuable for many people, what you have shared and how you have described it. Thank you very much, Ellen. We really appreciate this.
All right.
And you're so brave, Ellen, to really let us take part of your story. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
It's really important for us to have witnesses to our healing. It's very important. And I think that one of the songs I relate to that Angelina has is one of her original songs is Shield.
Okay. Do you want us to finish the episode with Shield then?
Yes, it's an extension of what's in her book, you know. I'll tell you what I imagine sometimes with that song is that they've had a fight, and because Angelina wants to do blah, 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 and the parents are saying no, but for her good, because she has said sometimes it's the painful things that inspire her. So just that shield part, and you're my fire and inspiration, and you protect me. You push me out, you would inspire me to go out, but you also hold me and embrace, I guess you would say, kind of protects me and holds me safe. So I love that. It's like an extension of the mother story.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you, Ellen.
Please be my shield against all that's blue. Love me and lead, and I'll carry through. Keep me from danger without good intent. Forgive me for all that I am. Shadows they whisper, still have my soul. Misled are those who march along. You got my dreams there for my all. Forgive me for all that I am. You are my fire when I can sing. You're the one who watching over me. You are my fire. Yeah. You are my fire when you are lead. Promise you won't give up on me. You are my fire. Surround me with angels, don't let them go. Please let my shelter forever. You got my dreams here for my home. Forgive